Hi guys, welcome back to Battle with Allah. This is Mujala Olua and I'm super thrilled to be here once again. In this very short video, we just want to talk about something that's very important and something that applies to or affects almost everybody. You know, death is a debt that is owed by everyone, and we only pray for long life. We pray to live a good life and to for the most part, most people pray to uh, get to paradise, you know, to get to make heaven at the end of their lives. I think it's important, you know, for us to live lives that are worthy here on earth, that we may find rest in eternity. And as a person, my belief is that that rest can only be found in Jesus Christ and in the finished work that he did on the cross. You know, when you accept that work, then you find rest in eternity. But that said, what we want to look at is burial practices in Nigeria and what the law says on burial practices. I thought to do this video because, you know, during Christmas, New Year break, while, you know, the festivities were on and most of you were eating rice and chicken and whatnot. I was eating my own rice and chicken too, but my colleague had been working on a wheel throughout the break. I was working on a wheel, you know, we were making additions, subtractions, we were brainstorming, and then we were requesting further information and doing this and that. And then this came up, you know. The wheel was almost perfect, but then I raised a question that led us to the law and that has now led me to doing this video. What do you think is the position of the law on burying people in Nigeria? Most people want to be buried in their property. In fact, it's a very common practice in Nigeria to be buried or to request to be buried in your own property, your residential property, where you have lived during your life or where your family had residence, or, you know, somewhere that you own. It could be a plot of land, it could be developed already, it could be even an uncompleted property, or it could be completed one where people are living in. What does the law say? And that led me to section 246 of the Criminal Code. I'm going to read that section to you right now. Any person who, without the consent of the president or the governor, buries or attempts to bury any corpse in any house, building, premises, yard, garden, compound, or within 100 yards of any dwelling house, or in any open space situated within a township, is guilty of a misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 6 months. So that's the law on burying people in residential places. It's a common practice in Nigeria, but it is actually against the law. Now, in the will that I was preparing, the testator had, you know, indicated a desire to also be buried in that property. Initially, I had raised an eyebrow because I was asking my colleague to discuss with the testator, you know, for various reasons. The reason I had even first brought up was that if you're asking to be buried in one of the properties that you have willed to a beneficiary, are you sure that beneficiary would want you to be buried there? You know, would they willingly surrender their own portion of the property when other people are going to get their own portion free of any encumbrance or any cost? Because, you know, if it's going to be a rental property in the future, it will reduce the value. These days, nobody wants to live near a corpse, you know. Nobody wants to live, you know, in a house where, you know, they bury. Most people would automatically say no, they can't rent that kind of property because, you know, there are different beliefs and superstitions around, you know, corpses, you know, and you know, burying burial sites and graves, you know, in residential places. So that was my initial troubleshoot, but then I expanded it to now say that what's even the provision of law on this? We know that people do it all the time, but what does the law say? The law says you should not even be buried in a residential place. And I'll tell you the rationale behind it. What if someone has died by, say, Ebola, or someone has died by, say, we just overcame COVID-19? You know, it's not the best to have that person buried in a residential building or in a dwelling place, because there's something called percolation. I don't know if you did it in biology or Greek, probably junior secondary school or Greek, you know. We did, I remember that we talked about it when our teacher was teaching us about fertilizers. You know, when you apply fertilizers to the soil, it percolates into the ground and then it fertilizes the soil so that the roots are fertilized and then they grow out and shoot upwards. So that means that percolation just means that it goes down. It's like when you pour water on the ground, you know, it goes down into the ground. So you cannot really tell the extent of how it may sink and how it may spread in the ground. The same thing when you bury someone, even if you bury an animal's corpse in the ground that's died maybe of a flu or of a communicable disease or something. You can't tell if there's a well near that house. You people will be drinking water from that corpse, because it will decompose and become part of the soil. So it mixes with the soil and with the water component of the soil. So if there's a borehole or if there's a well near that kind of building, it then flows into it, and then you people drink it, and then it will just be like an unknown disease or an unknown epidemic. Nobody knows the source, but you know that you buried a dead body in the ground. So that is one of the rationale, health reasons. For health reasons, if you check that section 246, it is in a chapter known as offenses against public health in the criminal code. So for health reasons, it is not good that if one of us has gone to the great beyond, we bury them so close to the rest of us such that we are now ingesting them again automatically. Of course, people have been buried across different soils across the ground over the ages, but the decomposition has happened, and maybe by the progression of time, such things may become less harmful because people move, people migrate and whatnot. But someone that has freshly died, if you pace them, say maybe in the next 50 years or in the next 20 years, they say active decomposition, or even the next 1 or 2 years, active decomposition. So you don't want to put them near where people are actively living, so that they don't ingest in case the person has died from an illness or the person has died from something that can be transferred. So that's basically the consideration or the intendment of the law. But also you look at the fact that this could cause a problem. It could reduce the rental value of such property, or even the economic value if you want to sell it in the future, because most people, and it is very normal, have emotional attachments to their loved ones who have gone to the great beyond. So if they want to put up that kind of property for sale, are you going to stand and watch, a total stranger removing the corpse, removing the grave of your great grandmother or your great grandfather just because, or your great grandfather, just because you want to sell the property? And there are also superstitious beliefs around that. People who do that, how do you look at them in the society? Because of money, they remove the grave of your great grandma, you have destroyed legacy, things like that. So it's best if we just go to a designated burial ground where you can go, that your loved ones, their remains were laid to rest here. It is a public space, it is well guarded. There are other considerations, of course, about doing that. But what I'm saying is that what this video is trying to teach is that it is actually unlawful to make the last resting place of your loved one a residential place without the governor or the president's consent. Now, when you're taking consent, you have to give reasons, of course. I recall that, when one of the ex-governors of Oyo State died, there was an issue around, him being buried in his residence in an estate in Ibadan. And then the family, it was in the news at the time, you could Google it. The family were contending that, the governor is not giving them consent, this and that. There may be political reasons, but I'm just saying that this law is actually in operation. As much as it looks as if it's being overlooked and it's not necessarily enforced, I think you should put it into contemplation in your peculiar circumstances. Because what if tomorrow it now becomes very much enforced? What's going to happen to all those loved ones that you buried in residential buildings, in residential places, in dwelling houses? What if the governor or the government now makes an order and says that they should remove all those corpses? Will it even look good for you as a family? Do you even think that your loved one would appreciate that kind of thing? Of course, they have died, but there are so many considerations. So the law also talks about burying in any open space, which means that you can't just wake up and say maybe you want to go and bury your father in the market square, or you want to go and bury your mother, in the roundabout that's in your city, in any open space. You cannot just, so there are laws and there are regulations guiding burying people. It's not something that is done on a whim, and you can't just make a request of your loved ones on how to bury you without putting this law in contemplation. So this is the position of the law in Nigeria, and we have advised our clients as such so that they can make a different decision on their last resting place, which will be included in their will. And if you're a lawyer that does will, administration of estates, succession and all those things, you should also put this into contemplation when advising your clients. So when they are making funeral provisions, burial provisions in their will, they should be advised that it is unlawful to request or insist that they should be buried in a building, premises, garden, yard, or a dwelling house. It is unlawful, actually. It is very much unlawful. And of course, the other considerations we've talked about, the health considerations, the economic value consideration. So this is all I wanted to quickly discuss in this video. I hope that you got something. Check section 246 of the criminal code and make your own independent research. I will see you in my very next video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you need paid consultation, please look in the description box for how to book a slot, and I'll talk to you then. Toodles.